Welcome to the Palestine Solidarity Podcast with your host, Katie Miranda. You can support this podcast by subscribing to Katie's Patreon at patreon.com/Katie Miranda or by visiting Katie's online jewelry and art store at katiemiranda.com. PalBox is a non-profit subscription box supporting Palestinian farmers, artisans, and the international solidarity movement. You can subscribe at palbox.org. All of these links can be found in the description of each episode.
Hi, welcome to the Palestine Solidarity Podcast. Today I'm here with Jenna Saadeh, who is a Palestinian American embroidery artist and activist based out of the Pacific Northwest. Welcome, Jenna.
Hey.
So Jenna recently, well, I guess it was back in August, came back from was your first trip to Palestine, right?
It was my second trip to Palestine. I had previously gone to visit for about 2 days just to Jerusalem, but that was while I was in Jordan studying Arabic / visiting my family. So it wasn't an extensive trip to Palestine, but at that time I wasn't quite sure when or if I would ever have the opportunity to go back again. So I went for 2 days, and then ever since then I wanted to go back, but I wasn't sure how I would be able to do that. And so that's why I ended up deciding to go on this delegation through Eyewitness Palestine.
And what was it called?
Eyewitness Palestine.
Eyewitness Palestine. And what was the purpose of the delegation, and what was the point of it?
Yeah. So the delegation, Eyewitness Palestine, is a program that does solidarity tours through Palestine about 3 times a year. And so they have specific delegations or themes for each one. And the one that I chose to go on was their Community Arts and Resistance delegation. And that brought together a group of activists, artists, and other community organizers on that delegation from across the U.S. and Canada.
Okay, great. And so the interesting thing about when Jenna went is that she is on the Canary Mission website. And if you don't know what Canary Mission is, it's kind of a blacklist of people. It's mainly students who have been active on the issue of Palestine. And it's basically a smear website, which takes things that people say out of context and like twists them around. And it's I think its main goal is to prevent people from getting hired after they graduate, but it's also kind of like a chain to the Israeli government so that they don't let in these people. Is that right? Is that how you would characterize Canary Mission?
Yeah, I think it definitely does target students, usually Arab, Palestinian, Muslim, people of color, with the purpose of connecting them to this website and distorting what they're saying to attempt to prevent them to potentially not get jobs. But I would also add that it kind of is this reminder that if you do Palestinian activism as a young student or just in general, like there's a probability that you're going to end up on this list. So it's a way to sort of like police, I think, these groups and to sort of just make people very afraid to even try and engage with Palestinian organizing.
Yeah, and so you knew, like, before you went on this trip to Palestine that you might not get in because you were on the website, right?
I think my online presence was definitely something that I was really worried about, just if that could be used against me. And I think for most Palestinians, just this is a very intense situation crossing the border. Um, and I was going through the airport, which, for a lot of people is just like a very hectic, nervous space that gives them anxiety. And so I had all that fears because if I didn't get into Palestine, pretty much like 2 weeks of like my vacation would be ruined. And so what Eyewitness Palestine does a really good job about is taking into consideration Palestinians, Muslims, or other people of color who may have a hard time getting in, really having them go through an extensive process of preparing to know how to answer questions when they go through airport security. So by the time I got to Ben Gurion Airport, I had gone through about 3 or 4 trainings about how to answer those questions, how to deal with my online presence if it did come up, and just sort of like how to handle yourself in that situation because it can be extremely nerve-wracking. And I know from my experience, I was really, afraid that I wouldn't get in and that I would just have, the whole thing that they want to do with you when they have you go through those interrogations is just to really humiliate you, make you feel ashamed, and then also attempt to make you not want to go back because of that negative experience. Right. But I think what the program really did is empower me to be able to handle that situation. And I think I handled it the best that I could, having that be my first time going through the airport. And I'm not sure what I would have done if I didn't have it.
That's great. So they really prepared you. And
yeah.
What happened at the airport? How long were you detained, and what did they ask you?
They ask you like the usual questions, kind of what when you first get there. So they ask you, when was your last visit, who your dad is, what his name is, what your grandfather's name is. And then based on all of that, I guess they determine whether you need more screening. And so they have you go to a waiting area. And then that's where they have you fill out a form with pretty much the same information, your dad's name, your grandfather's name, your email address, and I believe they ask for your phone number too. And then after that, they just kind of like make you wait in the waiting area with all the other people who they've profiled, which is usually Arabs, Palestinians, Muslims, people who are just who they deem a high risk or whatever. And so I ended up waiting there for about 20 minutes or so, I think. And then what happens is that they take you to sort of like a back office area. And that's where you have your like one-on-one questioning with the Israeli security. And I was first interviewed by a woman and just kind of going through the usual questions, the purpose of your trip, your return flight information, where you're traveling to, what their purpose of the trip is, and kind of what they want you to know is like how you're connected to different Palestinians in Palestine. And so what they were really concerned about with me was when my dad left Palestine, when he went to Kuwait, when he left Kuwait, who my husband was, where he was from, what his family's name was, and just trying to see if you know anyone in Palestine because they want you to put into a network. And then what they also want to try and do is have you open up your phone. And that was definitely a really serious issue because through the training that I had gotten, they pretty much say, don't open up your phone because that can cause other issues. Like, if you opened up your phone and showed, your contacts, why wouldn't you show them your social media or other things? So you kind of had
like
to be
a chain that they want you to get used to showing them something
right,
small and then gradually get to like
right,
your whole, okay.
right. So you
Tricky.
have to be like, it is. It's like very psychological. And so you really have to be principled and like defend yourself in this situation where you don't have that much power and just be really consistent in your answers and saying that you're not going to open up your phone. You're not going to open up your phone. And
Do they
they
ask
get
you
really
that like five different
the whole,
ways?
yeah,
The
pretty
same
much.
question.
And then they got like pretty upset by it. And then threatened me with like deportation if I didn't. Another man came in, and so it was like kind of like good cop, bad cop situation
Uh-huh.
where they were like, if you don't open up your phone, we're going to deport you or whatever. And I was like, I can't. And through the training, you kind of have to come up with like whatever excuses you can come up with. And so mine was like, I work at a bank. I can't show you my phone because there's like client information. It'd be breaking like policy or whatever. So I can't give you, like, I can't open it up. And then I feel like that lasted about like, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, I want to say. And then after that, they kind of just have you go back to the waiting area where your fate is where they're deciding like whether you're going to get in or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was about, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 minutes more. And then they just were like, here's your passport back.
And
And just
that's
like,
it.
let me go.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So you go through this like very like dramatic, high tense situation. And then it's pretty just like anticlimactic where they just kind of like give you your passport back and tell you to get out of the airport.
That's awesome. You stuck to your guns and didn't let them
Yeah.
intimidate
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And I feel like having trainings like this, especially for like people who potentially are going to have difficulty getting through, it can be really helpful
Yeah.
just so that like you have the ability to cope with what, you know,
What's
how
gonna
they
come
try and do
at
it.
you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We had a training when I first went to join ISM.
Mm-hmm.
That was a long time ago, and things have really changed since
Right.
then. Yeah, it's super important. Um, so then, what did you do after you got there?
It's a pretty tight schedule for what Eyewitness Palestine has you to do. So you're there for 10 days, 2 weeks pretty much. And each day you're going through pretty much to like a different city to learn about community organizations that are doing different types of work on the ground, as well as with local activists. So for us, we were pretty much in a different city each day. The first day we were in Bethlehem, where we visited the Ida camp and got a little bit worked or made Palestinian food with Noor Empowerment Group there, which teaches tourists or other activists how to make Palestinian food, and all the stuff or all the fees that they collect from teaching people how to make Palestinian food. They use to help people with like developmental disabilities or physical disabilities in their community. And so it's a way for them to sort of help these kids who otherwise wouldn't have access to, be able to attend school or other accessibility, devices. It helps those kids in the Ida camp, get those resources. And then another place that we went to was in Jenin, which was like the Palestine Freedom Theater. And so that really focuses for kids to do sort of different like multimedia projects as well as performances in their theater. And so that sort of helps kids engage with storytelling and helping them build, their skills, to potentially work in a multimedia field. And then another one also in the Dehesha camp, Lilac and another organization we worked with also works with kids focusing on Palestinian folklore and culture. And one thing that I really liked about that organization is that they really had really looked to the future. Like these things that we're teaching our kids are going to help us, after Palestine is liberated. Like they're our future, so we need to like have them, have these values going forward to create, the Palestine that we want to live in. And I think all those organizations really had that in mind, especially at the community and art level. Like, how do we want a Palestine to look in the future? And how do we teach, this younger generation coming forward to have, those values and those skills?
And how did they want a future Palestine to look like? And what were the skills that they were teaching specifically?
I would say just a more equitable society. So like equity with men and women, trying to like demonstrate that, the diversity of that, of like the communities they live in, that not everyone is the same, and sort of bringing that forward. And I think when it comes to the skills, it's just sort of like connecting with how to work, I think, with other people. So like one of the things that they do in the Dehesha camp is that they have like a whole music studio where young women, learn how to pretty much produce their own music.
Oh,
And
neat.
yeah, and so what they try and do through there is sort of like connect to different social justice issues, such as like Black Lives Matter here in the U.S., and really have them, connect to other struggles across the world so that they can learn how to incorporate that into like their music, or just into like their daily lives with how they engage in the world around them.
So it sounds like you spent a lot of time with arts organizations. And
Hmm.
can you tell me what art as a form of resistance means to you?
I think it's a form of just remembering where I'm from and my history. I think what the Zionists say is that they want Palestinians to forget. And for me, engaging specifically with like Palestinian embroidery is a way to remember, my own family's story, my own culture, its history, its evolution, how, in these different cities, different textiles and art were used to like create a very, vibrant life for themselves, but also used as, now as a form of resistance. And so I think that's a really like radical way we can look at like Palestinian, craft and art as a form of remembering, and also as a form of creating the future that we want to see. Like, how are we bringing these things forward and teaching like younger generations? And so that's what I try and do with Palestinian embroidery, with teaching other people or providing them with resources, or even just like talking about it with other Palestinians. I think it's essential to share those journeys, and just know that like because we're like doing the simple act of remembering, we're resisting.
I've noticed, like, particularly on Instagram, there's a huge um, kind of scene of food, Palestinian,
Hmm.
like, food bloggers,
Yeah,
and crafts, and it's really kind of exploded both like as kind of an industry where people are exporting products from Palestine to
mhm,
the US or Europe to sell them, and also in the US basing designs, new designs like off of
yeah,
traditional Palestinian designs. So I thought that was really interesting. And like the food, I mean, you probably follow a lot of these food
I do.
food Instagram accounts, and it's
Yeah,
so
yeah, because
mouth
I mean,
watering.
it is. I know. It's like the worst when I'm like at work and I'm like, dang, I have to eat like a salad for lunch and someone's making like a matluba or something and I'm just can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
But I think that, yeah, I mean, the food and the cultural part are all integral because we can't forget that like the project of the state of Israel is to take all of those things and make them their own. And so we can't forget that like all these things are part of a project to erase Palestinians and Palestinian identity. And so when people say things like, oh, like homeless, it's like not a big deal that they're taking it. Well, it is when it's part of a project of ethnic cleansing, which is trying to get rid of Palestinians and Palestinian culture, renaming it, rebranding it, and saying it's their own. And so I think the food is definitely an integral element because, well, Palestinians also need food to eat. They need to grow it. Palestinians have been farmers forever, have like a very deep relationship with their land. And so even just like saying hummus is Israeli or whatever, like that is a big deal, but we also can't forget that like a lot of Palestinians are food insecure. They don't have access to food or healthy food, or they're forced, to get just like whatever they can get from like the UN, and they take, Palestinians like their right to just be able to grow food, like taking their land, burning their olive trees, and just making it so difficult for them to live by just not being able to feed themselves.
Yeah,
And so
that's
you have to like remember like how like all these things lead into each other.
yeah, that's one of the really great travesties that I think a lot of people, um, maybe who haven't been there or who don't really know that much about the situation, they don't realize it because they see like the violence and the bombing and stuff. But
Mhm.
the fact that the Israeli government is like taking away Palestinians' ability to be self-sufficient and feed themselves and
Mhm.
farm so that they have to rely on the UN, which is just like complete bullshit
Mhm.
because
Right.
it puts a population who have been farmers and know how to feed themselves and grow food, and it makes them dependent on international and donor aid, which
Right.
it's sick. It's really
It is.
sick.
Yeah.
And I think that is not really communicated very well through, clips in the media or
Mhm.
articles, the absolute devastation of the, agricultural sector.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's why like whenever a Palestinian cookbook comes out, I usually just buy it.
Hmm.
Mostly because like to support like those Palestinian chefs who like really do struggle to like name what their food is.
What do you
And
mean?
I think
Like name
I
it?
would say yeah, well just like I guess specifically in the US, you call it Lebanese food, Middle Eastern food,
Mm,
Arabic food,
okay, yeah.
very like kind of like generic names, but not really saying this is Palestinian food.
Right.
I'm a Palestinian. I make Palestinian food. I'm a Palestinian chef. I think recently there's been a lot of like really great chefs who've really asserted that like we make Palestinian food. We're Palestinian chefs, and like we're as good as any Israeli chef, if not better, you know?
Yeah, I think the last woman I interviewed, Labna Abu Osba,
Mm-hmm.
she was talking about a restaurant um, where I think the owner was Palestinian, but he didn't
Mm-hmm.
call the restaurant Palestinian food. This was like
Yeah.
pre 9/11. It was
Yeah.
like Mediterranean or something, and she was talking
Right.
about how now people, Palestinians, are more like comfortable saying like
Yeah.
it's Palestinian food rather than just Mediterranean,
Right.
which is, could be Greek, could be Turkish,
It could be Spanish, could be French,
Yeah,
could be like whatever countries on the Mediterranean.
yeah. And
But oh, go ahead.
oh yeah, it's really quite different. And like looking at these Instagram Palestinian food accounts, I'm like realizing how diverse the food is. Like,
Right.
because when I was there, like being a non-meat eater, it's like, okay, falafel, hummus, fool,
Yeah.
salata, salata Turkiya. Um,
Yeah.
and, I learned how to make vegetarian makluba, but there's such a variety and it's not really served in Palestinian restaurants, which
Right.
I thought that was interesting. And I've learned more of this from working with Palestinian chefs and food bloggers with Palbox because I have this woman,
Right.
her name is Maya Kakish. She provides a recipe for
Mm-hmm.
every Palbox using the
Yeah.
ingredients from Palbox. And so there's just like this huge variety of food out there.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. And I think it's like a perfect way to like, get these recipes, have them, either told to us or recorded in whatever way. Um, because like our food is like diverse. Like every region has something they eat or make or whatever. And it's just like really great to see like the diversity of our cuisine and like how, we really utilize what is around us to make these really delicious meals.
yeah, now I'm getting really hungry.
I know. I'm like, I haven't had breakfast yet, and I need to figure out. I guess I'm gonna
Yeah.
make like matluba for 3 hours and have that for breakfast.
Awesome. Um, so, what would you say to somebody who wanted to go visit Palestine, whether they're Palestinian American or non-Palestinian? Like, what would you recommend they do, or what organization would you recommend they go with? Because
Hmm.
I know most people don't want to just go by themselves for the
Right,
first time.
for sure. I feel like going on some sort of delegation is a really great way to go to Palestine, especially if you're a Palestinian and you're going there for the first time, or going by yourself. I think that can be a really great way. I know for me personally, a lot of my family like either can't go back to Palestine, don't want to go back to Palestine for whatever reason. So I really didn't have a choice but to go through a delegation just for, being able to go around easily and safely. So I really recommend any delegation. Eyewitness Palestine is one of them. An organization called Grassroots Jerusalem came out with a book called Wujud, and that's pretty much like kind of like a radical tour book of Palestine, and they provide you with how to get around in Palestine, where to stay, how to support Palestinian businesses. And they also provide I believe they provide different delegations that you can go on while you're there. And so I think that's like a really great book to kind of like jumpstart your research if you want to go. And then also just like if like a Palestinian, just like ask them like how they went to Palestine. Like we all have different ways, different connections. And one thing that like I really appreciated when I was in Palestine was being connected to different friends and families and being able to sort of see them, connect with them, have them show me around. I feel like those connections are very important and sort of like build our communities.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to put the links to the organizations in the book that Jenna said in below the video, so you can click on them. So thank you very much, Jenna. We're about out of time. I actually have to go out because I'm
Okay.
selling jewelry at a bazaar today.
Yay!
So thank you very
Okay.
much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for
And
having me today.
yeah, and I'm
Really
totally hungry
appreciate it.
now, so maybe we should get together
I
and
know.
make food sometime.
I know. You have like, yeah, you have the hookup. You have a good kitchen.
Yeah,
So we should definitely do that. Make everything vegetarian, vegan, for
yeah.
sure.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right, take
Thank you so
care.
much. You
Bye.
too. Bye bye.